Have you ever wondered if those horror stories you hear could be real? Urban legends have always captured our imaginations, leaving us to wonder if there's any truth behind the eerie tales. In China, these stories aren't just made up for cheap thrills. Many of these tales seem so disturbingly real that they send a chill down your spine. Passed down from generation to generation, these legends are deeply woven into the cultural and historical fabric of the country. Perhaps it's this very connection to reality that makes them so unsettling. Imagine discovering that a place you once visited, a seemingly ordinary bakery, or a quiet corner of a park hides a terrifying secret no one dares to speak about. These stories aren't about Hollywood monsters or fantastical creatures. No, they're far more chilling because they revolve around situations that could happen to any of us at any time. These are tales that make you question the world around you, the very things you think you know. But before we dive into these unsettling stories, let me offer a warning. By delving into these tales, you're exposing yourself to a fear that doesn't dissipate easily. This is the kind of fear that lingers, creeping into your thoughts when you least expect it. If you're ready for that, turn off the lights, wrap yourself in a blanket, and make sure you're alone. Let's begin. There's something inherently disturbing about life-size dolls, even more so when they're at the heart of a horror story. The strange relationship between the human and the inanimate has always evoked unease. But this particular legend from Shanghai takes that discomfort to an entirely new level. Picture yourself wandering down a narrow street, the kind that's hidden away from the well-traveled roads of the city. The street is dim, shadowed, with an atmosphere that feels heavy, as if the very air is thick with the weight of forgotten time. You stumble upon a small, peculiar store, its windows dusty, its interior dimly lit. Inside, shelves are lined with antique objects, the kind that seem to hold secrets of their own. And among the strange trinkets and curiosities, you spot a row of dolls life-sized, eerily realistic. At first, nothing seems too unusual about them, though their lifelike features are unsettling. But as your eyes scan the collection, one doll in particular catches your attention. She's holding a small, simple mug, seemingly innocent, until you notice the words printed on it. "Help me." The sight of those words sends a jolt of cold terror through you. Every instinct screams that something is terribly wrong, but you can't look away, as though the doll is begging you to understand her silent plea. Your heart races, and a part of you wants to run, to forget this moment. But curiosity overpowers your fear, and you decide to investigate further. The young woman in the story who stumbled upon this doll couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was trying to communicate with her. Unsure of what to do, she left the store and contacted the authorities, hoping they would take her concerns seriously. But when she returned with them, the store was gone. Not just closed or locked up, it had vanished without a trace, as if it had never existed. Imagine walking down that same street again, looking for any sign of the store. But all that's left is an empty space, a shadow of something that might have been. A sense of dread fills you, gnawing at your thoughts. Did you really see it? Was it all just a figment of your imagination? Or worse, did something supernatural happen? Something beyond the realm of explanation? This legend makes you question reality itself. What if you found yourself in that same situation? Would you seek the truth, no matter how terrifying, or convince yourself that it was all just a dream? There's something inherently unsettling about lakes at night. The stillness of the water, the way the dark surface seems to stretch on forever, concealing whatever lies beneath. One of China's most disturbing urban legends revolves around such a place, the story of the spirit of shade. It begins with a young man who, on a cold night, decided to swim in an isolated lake. The water, calm and inviting, seemed to call to him, offering a moment of peace. But the lake hid a danger he never anticipated. The man dove in, but he never resurfaced. His body was never found, and his fate became a haunting mystery. The legend says that his spirit now lingers in the depths of the lake, waiting for someone to take his place. It's said that the spirit of shade lures unsuspecting swimmers into the water, hoping to trade places with them and finally find peace. Imagine walking by that lake at dusk, the fading sunlight casting long shadows over the water. The air is cold, the silence almost deafening. And then you feel it, a presence, something watching you from the water's edge. Would you dare go closer? Or would you heed the warnings and leave before it's too late? Some believe the lake is cursed, and many have reported feeling an inexplicable chill as they pass by, or a sense of being watched by unseen eyes. They say the spirit feeds on fear, growing stronger with every person who dares to approach the water's edge. Have you ever been somewhere that just felt wrong? A place where the air felt heavy, where every sound seemed to echo in an unnatural way? The spirit of shade is a reminder that such places exist, and sometimes it's best to listen to your instincts. Sometimes the most terrifying legends aren't about ghosts or spirits, they're about the dark, twisted side of human nature. In the 1980s, there was a bakery in Beijing that was famous for its delicious breads. People from all over the city flocked to it, drawn in by the irresistible aroma of fresh bread. But no one could have guessed the horrifying secret that was hidden behind the bakery's success. When authorities finally investigated the place, they uncovered a truth that shocked the entire city. The baker had been using human flesh in the bread. The revelation sent waves of panic through Beijing. Imagine the horror of realizing that something so everyday, something you'd consumed without a second thought, contained such a gruesome secret. Every bite of bread carried the weight of a heinous crime. And the worst part? No one knew for how long it had been happening. Fear spread like wildfire. Trust was shattered. People began to avoid bakeries altogether, afraid of what might be lurking in their food. Even today, decades later, the story continues to haunt those who lived through it. The paranoia remains, a lingering fear passed down through generations. Though the baker was arrested and the shop closed, rumors persisted. Whispers circulated that other bakeries in the city had been quietly investigated, and that more than one had been found guilty of similar atrocities. While these reports were never officially confirmed, they fueled a silent paranoia that continues to this day. The horror of the human flesh bakery reminds us that true terror doesn't always come from the supernatural. Sometimes it comes from the people around us, from the places we trust, and from the routines we take for granted. These urban legends remind us that fear isn't just about monsters or ghosts. It's about the unknown, the things we can't explain, and the darkness that sometimes lurks behind the most familiar faces. So, the next time you hear a strange story, think twice before brushing it off as just another legend. Because, as these tales show, the line between reality and nightmare is thinner than we think. The question that remains is, how can we be sure this story hasn't repeated itself elsewhere, unnoticed? The legend of Kashima Riko is one of those tales that leaves a lasting impression, especially if you've ever found yourself alone in a school bathroom late at night. It's said that she was once an ordinary girl, but a brutal attack left her gravely injured, her legs severed. Alone and terrified, Riko died in the cold darkness, with no one coming to her aid. Now, her spirit seeks vengeance, haunting school bathrooms, asking unsuspecting souls a simple but chilling question: where are my legs? And if you don't know the right answer, it's better not to find out what happens next. Picture yourself at the end of a long school day, stepping into an empty bathroom before heading home. The lights flicker, casting long, eerie shadows. Silence fills the air, heavy with unease. Suddenly, you hear slow, dragging footsteps like someone, weak and injured, is struggling to move. The sound echoes, sending chills down your spine. Then, you see her, Kashima Riko. She crawls toward you, her hollow eyes locked onto yours, waiting for your response. Panic surges, and words fail you. Do you know the right answer? Or would you freeze in fear, unable to escape the horror that awaits? Different schools tell slightly different versions of the story, but the essence remains the same. Riko's ghost appears to students who are alone, as if she's waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Her question is direct. Where are my legs? To survive, you must answer. They're on the Maishan railway tracks. Even if you know the answer, you can't shake the feeling that it's never enough that Riko, with her vengeful eyes, will always find a way to claim her revenge. The fear she evokes is visceral, a terror that clings to the ordinary, lurking in the shadows of everyday life. Kashima Riko taps into a primal fear, the terror of being pursued by something unstoppable, a relentless force seeking something it can never retrieve. Those who encounter her are subjected to a terror that won't let go. But why do stories like Kashima Riko's spread so quickly among students? Maybe it's because they tap into the universal fear of being alone and vulnerable in a place you should feel safe. If Riko asked you where her legs are, would you know what to say? Or would fear paralyze you, leaving you at the mercy of a vengeance that's waited far too long? These tales remind us that not all stories are just stories. Some carry the weight of real suffering, echoing long after death. Kashima Riko is a chilling reminder that fear can manifest anywhere, even in the most familiar places. After all, who hasn't felt a sense of unease in an empty, silent bathroom? The story of Bus 375 also haunts the imagination. In Beijing, this nightmarish tale is infamous. On a typical evening, passengers boarded the last bus, unaware it would be their final ride. Two mysterious men joined them at a lonely stop, and suddenly the temperature dropped. A growing, inexplicable fear spread through the bus, yet no one could understand why. The men were dressed strangely, their old-fashioned clothes and cold expressions out of place. The driver and conductor exchanged anxious glances as if sensing that something was deeply wrong. In a sudden outburst, an elderly woman started a fight with another passenger. They both managed to get off the bus. What seemed like a random altercation turned out to be a blessing. The next day, the news sent shockwaves through Beijing. Bus 375 had vanished, along with everyone on board. The bus, and all who remained on it, were never seen again. Now, imagine being on that bus, the growing sense of dread building inside you. Every shadow feels sinister, every movement suspicious. Something terrible is about to happen, and there's no way to stop it. The simple act of riding a bus, something so routine, turns into a nightmare. The mystery of Bus 375 leaves a lingering question. What happened to those passengers? Were they taken to some dark, forgotten place? Or did they meet a fate even more horrifying? Even if you don't believe in the legend, the unsettling feeling it evokes is hard to shake. The idea that an ordinary, unclosed space like a bus could isolate you from the world, leaving you vulnerable to unknown forces, is terrifying. As the city lights blur outside the window, who can guarantee you'll reach your destination safely? These urban legends burrow into our minds, creating a fear that doesn't easily fade. Whether it's a doll hiding a secret, a vengeful spirit, a sinister bakery, or a missing bus, These stories remind us that terror is everywhere. It hides in the mundane, waiting for the perfect moment to emerge. Now that you've heard these tales, the real question is, how do they affect you? Could you walk past these places without remembering what you've learned? Or would that familiar chill down your spine remind you that terror is always closer than we think? What would you do if you found yourself in the middle of one of these stories? Would you ignore the signs? Or would you pay attention to the warnings? Leave your thoughts in the comments and tell me which of these stories scared you the most. And if you're brave enough for more, check out our playlist of terrifying legends from Japan. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss out on more chilling tales like these.